It's here, the Northwest Sports Show, March 5th through the 8th. It's happening right now in the Minneapolis Convention Center. And check out the latest in fishing, outdoor gear, boats, RVs, travel and power sports. And right now, start driving. You can meet Nordo from now until 6 p.m. for a Friday night fish fry. All the details, KFAN.com, keyword calendar.
This is a kind of a callback to our Juracek discussion. Sorry, Dan, just tuning in. Are you talking about David Juracek or J.J. McCarthy? Woo, man. That's a fastball right under the chin is what that is. Well, we'll see. I don't know. I'm trying to get more excited about, if it's a fait accompli, about Kyler Murray. I really am. I don't like the concept of feeling like I'm getting somebody else's reject. Now, again, you could say, well, what did Sam Darnold represent? But I don't know. I don't have, before we get to some texts, these quotes, this goes back a ways, in fairness to Murray, okay? So you could say, well, I think this is from like 2023. Do you remember? I don't remember this, but the former All-Pro running back, LaShawn McCoy, just destroyed on a podcast called I Am Athlete Tonight. He just destroyed Murray. But he kind of, to me, encapsulated my issues with him. Runs around, runs backward. He does a circle, the ballerina circle, then goes left, goes right, turns all the way around again, then looks for a wide receiver. That's not how you play quarterback. Now, has he improved on that a little bit? Yeah, maybe. He ain't Mahomes. Let me tell you about Mahomes real quick. Majority of Mahomes' passes are based on timing. Third step, hit, boom, ball's out. Fifth step, boom, ball's out. Now, sometimes he goes off script. We can all do that, but not every pass. Every pass, Murray is holding the ball. Let's make a miracle. Every game he's played, watch him play. It's embarrassing, to be honest. Like, who's coaching this kid? Now, I know we got the quarterback whisperer, and I'm sure he's gotten a little better on that. But I wouldn't even get to this part with Robert Smith, and I meant to, because Robert Smith, when he would analyze players that he, on games that he broadcast, college or pro, but especially pro, one of the things that always stood out when we've talked to him is, the broadcast crew gets in early and they got an audience often with the head coach and maybe a couple of assistants and sometimes the quarterback. And one of the things he would pay attention to is the quarterback I'm talking to, is he giving me any impression that he does study or that he does pay attention or that he is thinking this game through, that he understands it's not just about whatever God-given talent I'm given? It would be an alarm bell for him. Who did it came up with? Who's the former Bears quarterback who was most recently with the Jets?
Fields.
From Justin Fields. I asked you about him the other day again. And that's the first thing he said to us. That Justin was complaining about, well, there's so much to remember and I got to do this. And Robert's like, well, really? It's, inside, he said, well, that's kind of the job. That's kind of what you got to do. So we all know the famous, contract clause situation, how true that was or how embellished it was. I don't know. I'm just, again, I probably, like Robert said, would take him over Geno because I just don't think Geno has that much left at this point. But I would rather it not come down to that. I really, and again, I know that there's no great options, but none of those necessarily excite me. Does Russo not have 5 minutes to spare on deadline day? Well, I'll tell you this. This is from Dylan in Northfield. I hesitated for me to reach out or for you to reach out on our behalf just because we just had him on yesterday. But it might not be the worst thing to text him to say, I don't know, we could do 5 o'clock Central, and our promise to him would be is we would keep it to 5 minutes. It wouldn't be a full segment. We wouldn't keep it for 27 minutes like we often do because he's so good. So maybe you reach out to him on our behalf and say, hey, look,
all right,
Barreiro's trying not to be obnoxious about demands, but if you could do just sort of a quick 5-minute roundup and butter him up. Say, we're getting text after text from people demanding that we get Russo reporting on the air today. So it's worth trying.
All right, it's sent.
Good.
To the ether.
Dan, not only do I regard Robert Smith as far better than mediocre, how cool is it to be the answer to the question, who originated the Ohio State University on MNF? Mike in New Richmond. Dan, how would we feel if JJ ran around like Murray? They'd rip him to shreds. So would KOC. That's Mike in New Richmond. Dan, Dave from Des Moines checking in. I seem to recall you weren't excited about Darnold, and Sean Salisbury told you to just watch this guy and you'll see. Maybe you should ask Salisbury about Kyler Murray. That's a great idea, too. So we're getting all these great suggestions from our text line. Some days the text line is fruitful. I don't know when we're going to have Salisbury on again, but I'm going to text him because I am actually curious because he's 100% right. On Darnold, Sean kept saying there's some there. There's enough football there in him. There's a good quarterback in there if you get to the right people. Or you get the right people around him. Robert Smith has to be the most underrated guest in the show. Always has an interesting opinion on the Vikings as well as a great outlook on life and sense of humor. We'll always listen to his segment. And it's a reminder that we should have him on more often. He used to be a weekly guest of this show. For many years at various times, he's done exactly that. And then I try to back away because he's not exactly heavily compensated. In fact, he's not compensated at all. So, and that's true of some other people too, but you go, okay, how far do you want to go with it? But my vow is to try to get him back on more often, and he pretty much gave us the green light. You heard it. When he wasn't swearing, which you took care of, I think, at least for the purposes of the frequency.
I hit the big button.
Hit the big button, which was good.
By the way.
Yes. Another trade? No, we're past the trade deadline.
No. Michael Russo locked.
Nice.
5 o'clock.
Good
so
job.
No top 5
That's
and 5.
simple.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful
He's
thing.
a team player.
So you're going to be bitter that it cuts into your top 5 at 5 time?
No, because the only person who should be bitter is Kevin Fallness. I don't get to play his bit.
Well, that's a good point.
5 o'clock.
That's a very good point.
But that's it.
All right.
No, I'm fine with that.
Let's get back on schedule. Ben Goessling in about 15 minutes. We haven't talked to Ben since last week. Very curious to get his view on the Kyler Murray phenomenon and whether it's just a fait accompli and we're just waiting for the big announcement or that it might be more complicated than that. The news on Vikings center, is it Ryan Kelly? Is that his name?
Yep.
He has announced his retirement. No big surprise there, but now official. That story broke earlier this afternoon. So a lot of ground to cover with him, and we'll have Lavelle on everything at 5.
The Fan celebrates our $5,000 winning teachers and iHeartRadio's Thank a Teacher. It's powered by Donors Shoes. There's still time to nominate a public school teacher making a difference. They could be the next to win $5,000 to make over their classroom. Do it now, iHeartRadio.com/teachers.
Jim from Elk River suggests that the name of the new Bursich Robert Smith podcast should be way better than mediocre. That would be a good name for a podcast. No question about that. That's kind of an inside joke based on what we talked about with Robert, a tweet somebody that he captured online that really was attempting to say that as a compliment to Robert Smith's running style and production as a professional football player. Dan with love, writes James, how hard would it be for you to keep a podcast to 30 or 40 minutes? Surprisingly, I don't think it would be that hard. I know that's hard to believe, but given I'm already on 6 days a week, think about that. Still, 6 days a week, I believe if I had a podcast, I wouldn't have that much difficulty. Now, you could say, well, yeah, you're saying that, but once you start bloviating, you can't stop. And there's some truth to that. But I think because of all the other times I'm on, I think, I might have, it might surprise people how easy it would be to say, no, and I think every study indicates that's sort of the wheelhouse, isn't it, for podcasts, 30 to 40 in most cases?
That's my understanding. Like, you want it to be like a commute.
Yeah, right, yeah. Exactly. So, but I still haven't found the theme for to have a podcast. I have a couple ideas, but I haven't really gone behind sort of thinking about them out loud and really developing them. So, and there's so many podcasts now. Well, how many more podcasts do we really need? Geno Smith is 4 inches taller than Murray. Isn't Kyler too short to see over these linemen scan the field? Well, we did talk about that with Robert. He had admitted that is one of the issues, especially if you like over the middle passes, which until J.J. McCarthy became a Viking at the quarterback, we did. KOC loves over the middle passes. We apparently took them away, took them off his plate, so you didn't have to worry about it. But that can indeed be an issue. I bet Kyler would be glad to hear the Vikings want someone as mobile as him because that makes him a good fit with our O-line situation. That's well played. There's not any question about that. By
the way, on your podcast bit,
yes,
you put out, because we do it by hours.
Yes,
a week. You put out 16 podcasts.
So we go hour by hour.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's 16 podcasts every week.
That's a good point.
Yeah, so that's what you got. That's quite a bit.
And it's live, because most podcasts aren't. So you're getting all of the imperfection right in front of you. There's no editing that's going on. It's all live. So every blunder is there for you to mock and ridicule, and every good moment is there as well. What about Arizona having to put in Kyler's contract that he studies the playbook a certain amount? Is that who you want mentoring JJ? Kyler is always better than I think he's going to be on the field. Super athletic. That's it. That's I think, the trap on quarterbacks such as Kyler Murray. It's, man, if we could bottle that. I think he's been in the league too long. I really do. I think he's actually regressed. Now, he did have, in fairness, he played all 17 games 2 years ago, and his QBR rating, I believe, was top 10. But that's the outlier in his career. And thrown a lot of interceptions. It may be that's what they're stuck with. They're going to have to do something. But I can't get excited about it. I can't say I go into, man, this is what a great option. This is going to be fun. And I might be kidding myself on, let's say, Mac Jones. I'm clearly kidding myself on Aaron Rodgers. But on Mac Jones, he doesn't have a body of work being a starter as long as Kyler Murray has. But by the same token, the more I see of Kyler Murray, the more worried I get. There's too many games where I just come and say, what? There's not that much there. There's not as much there as we think. And yes, he's incredibly elusive. And you could say with an offensive line that's bad, he may not like hearing it. Or I shouldn't say bad, but evolving and inconsistent. You have some advantage there, but I think there's limits. I'm also curious, and this is what we're going to talk about with Ben, what the running back plan is. I mean, we got a lot of issues, boys and girls. We really do. At a number of key positions, not just the quarterback. And I just think we've had too many bad drafts in a row to think that in one offseason we're going to be able to fix that, because we're not going to be able to spend liberally, I don't believe, this year. Even though the stories, there have been several stories today indicating restructure of a bunch of contracts, including that of Darisaw, Justin Jefferson. Who else did I see? One of the DBs. So then that's great, and maybe that's going to end up giving us room to at least make one significant free agent signing. I don't know, but just got a lot of work to do. No question about that. If you have questions for Ben, Bradshaw and Brian KFAN text line is, as always, wide open at 64686. Lavelle in an hour. And don't forget, Bonus Russo. He's going to join during the top 5 at 5, at least briefly, to kind of, put a punctuation mark on the wild late, right before the trade deadline moves. None of them earth-shattering by any means, but we'll give him a chance to evaluate and to sort of see where the Wild go from here now that indeed the trade deadline is passed.
The Fan welcomes some great shows to Ledge Amphitheater this year. John Mulaney will be there August 22nd. Blues Traveler and Gin Blossoms, September 12th. Get all the details, KFAN.com, keyword calendar.
My former newspaper has one of the more maddening online presences. Let me give you an example. I wanted to read the latest piece written by our next guest, Ben Goessling, on Vikings quarterback options. But when I try to click on the link that he offers, it immediately goes to, I got to worry about getting the password in, even though on the app, my password's already in. And on the Start Tribune app, I can't find the same story. It doesn't even appear. What the hell's going on over there? What is there anybody working quality control at the Star Tribune? Because the one thing that you want to do with your customers is make it as easy as possible, paying customers, I might add, to have access to your content. Correct?
You would certainly think so. Yes,
it's annoying.
A little more of a challenge than we would like to make it.
It is,
or at least those of us in the journalistic side of the enterprise would like to make it. But
we'll get through it. And the beauty of it is, you can tell us what you wrote, or at least give us some hints and some insight into what you wrote. Because I had a conversation about an hour ago with Robert Smith. Robert Smith is on board 100%. With getting Kyler Murray here. He said for him, there was no comparison between Kyler and Geno Smith. He'd be far more interested in Kyler. He admits he's analyzed some of his games, some of the national TV work that he's done. And I'm playing hard to get on Kyler. I don't know, man. You tell me. I understand why the fit makes sense contractually, financially. And he has been a starter in the league, and you're not going to get greatness, right, in terms of what their options are. But I always feel like there ends up being less there rather than more there, despite all of the physical talent he has occasionally tantalized us with.
Yeah, I mean, tantalizing is certainly the word for him with the mobility and some of the things we've seen him do on broken plays. My question with this one is, how would this fit in the type of offense they want to run? And I do think that if he hits the market as he's widely expected to do, and I guess he's said he's expected to do, I think the Vikings will be very interested in him. I think his relative youth compared to a guy like Geno Smith is attractive. And, the talent certainly that got him picked number one overall is a lot of what they would be interested in. But how does he fit with the offense?
Yes.
When they want things to be primarily in the pocket, they want things to be on time. It's not necessarily backyard football. I mean, he's been a lot of quick game stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
He's been a lot of kind of scramble plays, and they want some things in between there. I mean, they want all of those second-level throws, those dagger cuts that we hear Kevin O'Connell talk about to Justin Jefferson over the middle of the field.
Middle of the field, right? Exactly.
Where you can attack the second level of a defense, especially off of play action. So I think a lot of what you want him to do, or you want a quarterback to do, they have not seen from him quite as much. It would take a little bit of a projection that way, and he's also had durability issues. He's missed, I think it's in my story, which I'll put a link to again for people. It's a little easier to find. He's missed 21 games in the last 3 years.
That's right.
He was only out there for 5 last year because he had an injury, a mid-foot sprain that was in the area of a Lisfranc injury, but not a Lisfranc injury itself, I guess, is how it was reported. So there's some of those things to figure out as well. And durability is a lot of the question with J.J. McCarthy. So a lot of the issues you have with McCarthy, I think there's questions about how much Kyler Murray would solve those. If you can figure that out, the talent is certainly there. But a lot of the, I think, obstacles to making him the guy would be, how does he fit when you can get him here, and how do you put all of that talent in the structure of what you want to do and make it work in this particular offense.
Is there anything to indicate in your reporting that they are exploring or have explored acquiring Mac Jones, where they would not where I would put him, where you would put him, but where they might put him in the pecking order?
Well, I think they'd be interested in it. I think it'd be one of those things that it would be a good fit for them. The last time they got a quarterback from the 49ers, it worked out fairly well in Sam Darnold. So they have a high level of respect for the way the 49ers coach their quarterback. Certainly the schematic fit is there. The thing with him is I think John Lynch has said the price is going to be relatively high to get him. So, that may be something that comes about, especially if they've got draft picks. I mean, if Jonathan Bernard gets traded, that may add to the draft pick haul, and you want to spend some of those on guys that you're acquiring in the draft, not just in trades. But that could be an option if they have a little more draft capital and they say we can make the move for a guy like this. But how soon you would make that type of a move, I think that timing would be some of the question there. I think they're going to want to get somebody signed next week, but if you're signing somebody to a one-year contract at a vet minimum, it doesn't preclude you from doing anything else, I suppose. And we've seen with them, if they can get more quarterbacks in the building, they like to do it. So I think if they felt like they had a decent package to make a run at Mac Jones, you could try to do that. I wouldn't rule that out. I just think the price is going to be high. But if they wanted to go that route, I think they could, especially if this Bernard trade ends up happening, they could find ways to make some things work in their favor.
We are certainly going to get to the Ryan Kelly news in a minute and some of these contract adjustments that have been made and what that might mean in more cosmic sense. Let me get to a couple of texts that have come in early. This is from Brian out of Medina. Dan, love the show. Been listening since about 2002. Ben is a great guest. Here's a question for him. In the Vikings quarterback discussion, we've been hearing a lot about the Vikings possibly having to guarantee a starting job for certain quarterback candidates. What does that mean? Is it just like a handshake agreement, or is there something more concrete to it? And what if JJ were to outperform the other quarterbacks in camp and or practice?
Well, when I hear the word guarantee, I mean, a lot of times in the NFL, the only guarantee that matters is in a contract, and a lot of times playing time and compensation go together. And if you were expected to play a bigger role, you probably end up with a larger salary or guaranteed money. So the fact that in these cases, if it's Kyler Murray or Geno Smith, you're probably talking about a vet minimum deal because effectively the Cardinals and Raiders are going to be paying those respective players to play for somebody else next year, and the Vikings or whoever signs them would have no interest in, kind of letting the Cardinals or Raiders off the hook with a bigger deal. So if you gave somebody a vet minimum deal, you're not beholden to that player beyond, the $1.2 million that it's going to cost. So if they were to say you're coming in as the guaranteed starter, but they're paying a vet minimum salary, I'm not sure that it means that much because those words are only worth the air that it was expended to say them. So I think a lot of this is going to be how they frame it. I think a lot of what they'll promise, or at least what they'll say, is there's going to be an open competition. You're going to have a chance to win this job. And I do think that in and of itself is different than last year because Daniel Jones, the money was there to bring him back, but he looked at the situation and judged it. I think judged it correctly, saying Anthony Richardson is going to be easier for me to beat out than J.J. McCarthy, given how they feel about J.J. McCarthy and how much they want to see him. I don't think that's going to be the message the Vikings send this year. It's going to be, you have the chance to come in and win the job, may the best man win, and if it's you, we're going to be behind you. So I think a lot of it will be in how they talk about it, and I think I'm not sure they're going to be able to have any more of an actionable promise than you're going to have a chance to come in and compete. I think if they're signing a guy at a vet minimum deal and promising him the job, that's a little bit of fool's gold, and I don't think they'll do it. So I think this probably ends up being something where everybody gets a chance to win the job, and if McCarthy shows the improvement that they want to see, maybe it's him. I think that's a long way to go for him to get there by the end of training camp this year, but I think he'll get that chance, and whoever they bring in will get the chance and probably can read the room and say, hey, there's a good chance for me to win this job, given where J.J. McCarthy was last year and the fact that he doesn't have kind of that level of cachet built up in the organization that he might have with a better first season as a starter.
Beyond Kyler and Geno Smith, give me some other names that you explore in the story that's at StarTribune.com.
Well, we talked a little bit about Daniel Jones. I mean, I think that will be tough because the transition tag is there, and I think that's $37.8 million for the Colts, and they can match any offer sheet that another team would throw at Daniel Jones. So if that's less than $37.8 million, I mean, they've already signaled they're willing to pay him that much. So I think it would be difficult to bring him back, even if there'd be interest in doing it because of that familiarity. Then, Malik Willis, I talked about it a little bit just in terms of he's going to be one of the big names in the market. He's played in obviously a very similar offense in Green Bay to what he'd have in Minnesota, but you have questions with durability there, I suppose. You haven't had to see him go through a full season, and just when he's done it in Tennessee, he wasn't very good. So how much of this can you map out to a 17-game season, and what's the price going to be on him? I think that'd be a little bit of a tough road to take. And then, the old familiar candidates, Aaron Rodgers and Kirk Cousins, I talked about them a little bit as well, just because there were talks with Rodgers last year. I think there would be interest from Cousins in coming back. I think he wants to be somewhere where he has a chance to play, but he may read it as I'd have a chance to go in there and compete for that job. So I think that would be a little bit of an odd fit because of the optics of it, but it's hard to rule out because he's familiar with the offense, obviously has a very close relationship with Kevin O'Connell, knows a lot of the coaches, knows a lot of the teammates. So I can't rule that one out. I think it'd be awkward, but can't completely close the door on that one. And then, Jimmy Garoppolo, I think, is a fit because of the scheme stuff. And then we talked a little bit about Carson Wentz, too, although it sounds like the Jets are maybe interested in bringing Carson Wentz to reunite with Frank Reich out there. So that's kind of the list. I mean, Anthony Richardson comes up a little bit because they were interested in him in that draft, and we all remember that clip of O'Connell after the game, and I think at 24, telling Richardson, kind of hold your head up kind of stuff. So, that could be an avenue. I don't think that's going to be the only avenue if they did that. But, a lot of the names I think they're going to look at are people that have started and probably can be had relatively cheaply and, gives you at least another option alongside McCarthy, if not a guy that takes the job from him.
It sounds like my dream name, Aaron Rodgers, because I'm stubborn, is not in the conversation out there, right? We don't get any. I know, again, on the one hand, it's like, we're considering everything, but that's awfully open-ended, and that doesn't necessarily mean that you are really, in a realistic sense, considering everybody. Do you think that's ruled out at this point? Rodgers is ruled out?
It's hard to say anything is ruled out, but I do think you'd have a lot of the same questions that existed last year in terms of, how much he'll be 43, I think, in early December, and how much does he have left at this point? How mobile is he? I mean, he doesn't have to play that way as much anymore. We saw some of it last year. He can kind of pick his spots, but is he going to be a guy that you trust over the course of 17 games to hold up? Is he somebody that fits what you want to do long term? That's a one-year solution. There's really no, realistic option to say it's more than that, I don't think. I mean, he's on a year-to-year basis at this point, and do you want to have him come in and effectively guarantee him the job? I mean, I think that's the thing.
Yeah, you'd have to do that with him.
I don't think you're going to have him come in 4 MVPs to his name and a Super Bowl MVP to his name saying, hey, you're going to go and compete with this 23-year-old. I think that would be a hard sell for a guy of that stature, and I think it was last year. So there were certainly people that were interested in the Rodgers scenario last year, and I think people that are going to have pretty strong voices in this thing again this year because of the pedigree and because of what he's done in this league. But I think a lot of the questions that existed last year would exist again, and I do wonder with him if he goes back to Pittsburgh. I mean, it's weird to kind of come back full circle to this because I think things had gotten a little bit disjointed with him and Mike McCarthy at the end in Green Bay, but maybe absence makes the heart grow fonder, and it's a familiar offense, and they go back to do it one more time there. I mean, it would be an odd way for him to finish it out, but that is a possibility for him, and I think that's probably more likely than the Vikings. But there were people, like I say, last year that were interested in the Rodgers scenario, so maybe that comes up and gets another a conversation at least next week.
Ben Goessling, Star Tribune Now, Bonus Russo Radio to talk wild trade deadline moves at about 5:02 and Lavelle at 5:30. The Ryan Kelly news, he announces his retirement officially today. I assume that took nobody in the organization by surprise?
Correct. Yeah, they've been expecting this, and I think they've been talking with him about what he's thinking, I should say, for a while. And I know this was kind of a decision he made with his family, thinking about his future. Had 3 concussions last year, and really the one that he had, he had the long break, and then they had him fitted for a new helmet. They had him put a Guardian cap in there too. Basically, they took every precaution they could take in terms of rest and protection with the helmet, and then he got another one. So I think you get to that point and say, if this is happening this much, and I think you do become more susceptible to another one after you've had a previous concussion. So if this is happening this much, you got to think about the rest of your life. You got to think about your family. And I think everybody in the organization was kind of expecting it would go this way. It's probably the right decision for him, as hard as that is, I'm sure, to say goodbye after 10 years and not really on your terms. It's because of the health stuff, but it's too much of his life left. And I think there was, I know last year when he was on that break, and it kind of started in the overseas trip where he first got hurt, or he had the second concussion, I should say. And I think there was a lot of discussion even then about, do you want to keep going with this? And is it safe to keep going with this? So I think there's a lot of people in the organization saying, you need to think about the long term. You need to think about what the rest of your life looks like. This is not just about the 2026 Vikings or you playing another year in your career. It's more about, what is the rest of your life going to look like after this, once you've had the toll of perhaps another year of wear and tear in the NFL? So, yeah, I think this was kind of expected, and I think it's probably the right decision for him. But, if they're looking for a center again, it clears up some salary cap space once those papers are official. But, it's another shift in that offensive line, but one that probably is for the best, I would think, for him in the long term.
So we need a center. We need a running back, one would assume, if the reporting that you guys have done on Aaron Jones is accurate. Is there any reason to believe that the Vikings think that they're going to give it a go with Jordan Mason being literally their number one main running back, or not so much?
I think Mason will be involved. I mean, he's signed for this year, and I think he'll have a pretty sizable role, but I would expect they continue to add at that position. I mean, I think they've got enough draft picks. I would not be surprised at all if they invest one, maybe in those first couple of days in a running back. I think they want to get more explosive there, and they have ideas that ground game becomes a little more effective with Frank Smith involved in the offense. So I think somebody else comes in with Jordan Mason once Aaron Jones is released, as he's expected to be next week. So, yeah, I think that's another area where you probably look at and say they're going to need to invest some resources at that position as well. So it's another one you add to the list for sure.
So we've seen a number of contracts adjusted, right? Justin Jefferson included, Darisaw, I think Jordan Murphy Jr. you mentioned is in that list. So do we know, have we been able to do all of the numbers to see whether we're now under the cap to the point where we can be not as ambitious, I doubt we can be as ambitious as we were last offseason, but to still try to plug at least one of the holes through free agency, or where are we at in that regard?
Yeah, I mean, the big thing to clarify here is how much they cleared in these 3 contract conversions for Jefferson, Darisaw, and Murphy. They got some of this in my story. The most they could have cleared is, I believe, $18 million for Jefferson. It's like $9.25 for Darisaw and $11.3, I think, for Murphy, if you move all of that down the road. So if you do those 3, cut Jonathan Allen, cut Javon Hargrave, cut Aaron Jones, and then Ryan Kelly retires, they should be under the cap at that point. So that should give them enough room to play with, I think, and have a little bit of room to fill out the roster. You're probably talking in the neighborhood of 20-some million at that point, maybe 25 million under, I think, by the math at this point that I would have. So, and they're going to do some other things. I think a Hawkinson restructure is probably coming. A Brian O'Neill extension is something I think they'd like to get done. Some of these moves, I believe, are not going to be official until after the start of the league year. So there may be a timing thing there where they have to be under by 3:00 next Wednesday, but some of the restructures can't happen exactly before then. So you're going to have to clear a little bit of room before some of these things hit. And I think there'll be some moves to figure some of those things out as well. But overall, I think once the dust settles, they are going to have some space to fill a few holes. I don't think it's going to be a year where they're terribly ambitious. I don't think it's going to look anything like it did last year. And I think they're going to be a little more conservative by nature anyway. And I don't think they want to be committing as much cash and committing as many long-term contracts to players on the open market as they did last year. It's going to be more of a let's draft well, let's try to fill in the roster where it makes sense to do it type of year. But yeah, I think they're going to be in a spot where they'll have enough room to play with. And, then everybody, people will kind of say, hey, what's the long term of this look like? And I mean, they're going to have some things to figure out. It'll depend on what the roster looks like in free agency. But, the fact that they're still not probably going to be paying a quarterback big money, I think they'll be in a decent position, especially if they can fill out a decent chunk of this roster with players on rookie contracts. That means you have to draft well. It means you have to probably add some players maybe as undrafted free agents too. But this roster needs a refresh with young, controllable players, and I think that's going to be a big focus of this offseason.
Do these salary cap moves, are these under the classification of you're just putting off the pain that eventually the ticket is going to come due, even restructuring this way, or what? This particular step, I know it's hardly unprecedented, but does it simply put off the pain that you're going to eventually have to feel, or is it more sensible than that?
Well, yeah. I mean, in the kind of general sense of it, yes, you are putting off the pain. I mean, every dollar does hit the cap eventually, and you're going to have to pay out the money that you are deferring. But the trick to this whole thing at this particular moment is the cap keeps going up because the TV deals are so lucrative. And I think I saw a report today that there's talk of reopening the TV deals even this year. I mean, I think they signed 10-year TV deals, and the league, I think, wants to say there's enough bidders, there's enough people that have money, let's reopen this and try to get even more. So if those things keep going up, the principle of it is, yes, every dollar hits the cap, and you're going to have to pay the piper eventually. And the cash is the other piece of it, where you're shelling out cash for signing bonuses and that sort of thing. And the Wilfs have never been shy about doing that. But this is not a charity. Everybody's running a business here too. So you consider that. But from the cap perspective, I do think the TV contracts being what they are and looking like they're going to continue to go up, I think would be the NFL's hope in reopening the negotiations at some point here relatively soon. That does mean that the cap continues to rise, which means if you're deferring money into the future, you're effectively doing it at a negative interest rate. It's worth less against the cap in the future than it is now because the cap keeps going up. So in principle, it's got some risk, but with the dynamics of the NFL the way they are right now, it probably doesn't have all that much. So, I don't think it's a world they want to live in all the time, but at this particular moment, I think when you look at the structure of the cap, where it's gone and where it will probably continue to go, you can do it with a relatively minimal level of risk, I think.
Thank you very much for the time. As always, it's busy time, obviously, so we'll be in touch next week. Thank you.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, Dan.
Ben Goessling covers the Purple and the NFL for the Star Tribune and joins us each and every Friday now, pretty much year-round, because this has become clearly a year-round beat, maybe this year even more crucially than ever. Lavelle in about 35 minutes or so. When we come back, how about some bonus Russo to comment on what the Wild, did and did not accomplish at the trade deadline. Russo Radio Dateline Vegas. He is next.